Before we get started today, guys, we have a special ask of you. I don't know how you found the podcast or how long you've been listening to The Next Man Up, but chances are someone shared this with you and invited you to become part of our community. And that is exactly what we are asking you to do for someone else. We have seen some encouraging growth in our podcast over the last few months, but we know all too well that there's so many dads out there that could benefit from listening and participating in this discussion around what it means to be a man and what it means to raise healthy and godly men. So, will you invite someone to join our community by sharing this podcast with them? In Apple Podcasts or in Spotify, you can find the 3 horizontal dots, which will give you the option to share the show or share the link. And if you're using a podcast player, that feature is there as well. More importantly, think of someone you know in your circle of influence, in your family, in your friends, in your coworker sphere that would benefit from being a part of this community, and do us a favor and share this podcast with them. In that way, you can help us continue to accomplish our mission of raising healthy and godly men. Thank you in advance for helping us this way. Okay, now let's get to today's episode. This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to The Next Man Up,
part of the NRT Podcast Network.
Well, hey guys, welcome back once again to The Next Man Up podcast. So good, as always, to have you with us and to be part of this community that's raising up the next generation of healthy and godly men, because when that happens, everyone benefits. You know this, my name is Mark, and I'm joined once again today by my sidekick, my partner, my friend, Josh.
It's good to be back on the show.
It's good to have you back. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you.
It's been a while.
It has.
It's time for us to do this again.
I agree.
Cool. And our listeners probably wouldn't know this, but we're trying to get an episode or two recorded ahead of time.
Yeah.
Because you have a significant event coming up here in a month or so.
It's like 5 weeks out from now when we're recording this.
Yeah.
Which is the arrival of my second child.
Okay. That will change things a bit.
Yes, it will.
I always like to say you go from playing like zone contain defense to man-to-man defense.
I think we go from double team to man. If we had a third, then we'd be in full zone prevent.
Well, that's when I change sports. I go to hockey.
Oh, you go to hockey.
That's when you're on the penalty kill.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely on the penalty kill.
Yeah. So when is the due date?
It's mid-June.
Okay.
Yeah.
And boy or girl?
I have no idea.
Okay. So surprises all around.
Yeah. There's so few surprises left in this world. We'd like to keep this one a surprise.
Okay. Well, that's cool. That's the way we did it. And each parent charts their own course. So good for you.
Yeah, it was fun to find out that we had a boy the first time around. So we'll see what happens this time.
And if you have another boy, you're like, good, we know how this works.
Yeah, if we have a girl, then it's like, I guess we try to figure this out.
Welcome to the club. It is how the process works. Yeah. So we were talking before we turned on the microphones about what this means for your first son.
Yeah, I mean he's 2.5 now, so he's been an only child and received all of the attention.
Yep.
For literally years. I could say that plural.
For his entire life.
Yeah, right. I know. And this isn't super surprising or hard to figure out. I mean, that's what a first child experience is. But things are about to change dramatically, and he's about to have a significantly less amount of attention paid to him, especially from mom.
Yep.
Which is going to be hard.
It is going to be hard. It's a dare I use the word traumatic? It can be a bit of a traumatic event in the life
for
of
him it will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been trying to figure out ways of lessening the trauma, I suppose. So like I've been taking him for like a half day at a time solo, that sort of thing. On the weekends, because that's the only time I'm not available to do that.
Right.
And then sending my wife Katie away from the house so that he has to deal with me on his own. But we've also started talking to him about like becoming a big brother. Like this is a new thing that you're doing. You're becoming, you're gaining some responsibility. And like 2.5 years old, he's not going to quite get that yet. He's about to get that, but we've really been trying to promote him into the big brother role, which he's going to fill for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Whether he likes it or not, that's the case. So we have to, I, as a dad, feel I need to push him into and pull him into that new role as a big brother and what that means, the responsibilities that come along with that, and how can we have him be a productive member of the household and not just an attention sink.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think it's a intriguing and a really good way to look at this transition that's going to happen in his life, because circumstances are happening beyond his control. Mm-hmm. And he will react. He's 2.5. I know this of him. He's a very emotionally expressive child. He will have a reaction. But as a dad, I love the mindset that you're bringing into this, which is promoting him. Like, you are ready. This isn't just about mom and dad having another child that's going to disrupt your entire foundation and your entire life. This is about an opportunity you have to grow into this big brother role, and you're ready. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I know he's only 2.5. It's been a long time since I've had a 2.5-year-old boy running around my house. But just saying those words that way gives me a feeling of, ooh, dad thinks I'm ready. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's something to this next step, this next stage that I want to lean into in a different way, rather than like my world got turned upside down by this alien and now I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how did you handle, I mean, like you said, it's been a while since you've had a 2.5-year-old, like both of your boys never graduated from high school. But how did you approach this when your middle boy was born?
Yeah. So my memory is a little fuzzy, and this would be a great time to go back to a journal. Oh, wait, I didn't journal. Note to self. But one of the funny memories that stands out from that time period is my oldest at the time would have been 2.5 as well.
Okay.
And he's sitting on the hospital bed, and the middle guy's in the room in the bassinet or whatever, right? The hospital bed for the baby.
Yeah.
And my oldest is more interested in eating the snacks and the crackers that were there for the wife that did all the work of delivering the child. He's consuming the snacks. So like that's kind of a reality check of, okay, here's a 2.5-year-old, what he's able to process and think about. But I know we spent a lot of time talking with him and preparing him for his role. Not just that your world is going to change, but you now have a role to play, and this is going to be a cool thing for you as a brother. Now, I wish I could go back and remember the scripts or the conversations, the exact wording. I know there's a number of books out there, and I'm sure, knowing my wife and knowing how we operate, we had a book or two just to guide him through. You guys have probably done that as well.
No. we haven't.
Okay, well there's an opportunity to find those books that are written to the brother to help him grasp what might be happening and begin to process it again in 2-year-old logic.
Yeah.
But there was always an intent on our part to help them see this as their role is changing. They're taking on bigger and more responsibility, and they're ready.
Do you feel like for your son, your oldest son, that this was like the first step in initiation into manhood?
You know, I think that's an excellent way to look at it. You know, as we talk a lot about initiation and rite of passage, and you know, just this morning, you and I were talking about initiation more of as like a mindset or an overall big process with rite of passage as a very specific season.
Yeah.
But from the beginning, we had this mindset of we're initiating these boys into manhood. And it starts early.
Right. Well, it can start early.
It can, yes.
And it's up to you as a father whether you want to start it early or want to wait.
Better way to say it, yes. But I think even at 2.5, that process of going from an individual child into now a brother in the family, right? The family dynamic, the relationships that are there, it begins, or certainly can begin, that discussion around you're young today, but we've got our eyes set on what's coming down the road, and this is one step in many of you preparing for what's coming and us guiding you through that process.
So as you look back to your son's early childhood, how would you, or do you even, it's been a while, again, no offense, but how do you, like what opportunities did you find to reinforce the qualities of being a man in those early childhood stages?
Yeah, so, you know, we started with this concept of Kai becoming a brother, but that's just one of many examples that can be leveraged in this initiation type of thinking. You know, riding a bike, getting your first pocket knife, driving the car, your first responsibility where dad says, I trust you with this role, this task, this thing, and you know what to do, and so go do it, right? Those are all examples of things that are happening in everyday life that you can co-opt or cooperate with in the process of raising these boys to become men. So part of what we promote here is an understanding, a definition of manhood. And that looks a little bit different for every guy. But if you've worked through what you believe manhood is, a healthy and godly manhood, then the task to go deliver something down the street to the neighbor becomes an opportunity to celebrate that quality of responsibility, or that quality of courage, or the process of learning how to ride a bike, which just, it seems so natural, right? But it comes
It's
with
not natural.
It's not, and it comes with some bruises and some scrapes. So how do those opportunities, or how do those events become an opportunity to talk about dealing with pain and feeling it, but moving past just the feeling of, oh, I'm bleeding, you know, or helping them to acknowledge that doing hard things does sometimes result in some pain, or some scars, or some bruising. But part of being a man is leaning into those challenges. And son, I believe that this quality, courage, is something that we're about in our family and about as men, and I want you to learn what it means to be courageous, right? Like those are just a few examples of how this can play out just in everyday situations.
Did you have that explicit of a conversation of like, this is what courage means, or this is what it means to move through pain, to do something hard? Like, were your conversations like that specific?
I think the short answer is no.
Okay.
Had I the opportunity to go back and do it with a definition of manhood in place when they're 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, well, then that opportunity is clearly there. The definition that I worked through and began to really teach the boys didn't come until they were later. So there were opportunities earlier on that I missed, but certainly later in their journey during that apprentice stage, we were talking about what does it look like to be courageous? What does it look like to be honorable and honoring? What does it look like to have faith? And what does it look like to love others? Those were the 4 qualities that we landed on as a definition. So yes, they very much made it into those conversations specifically, but later in life, once I had that definition in place.
But if you had to go do it again, you would take that definition you have in place now, and you would have started earlier and had those conversations.
Absolutely.
Like early on.
And even if the boys didn't know what I was doing, there would be opportunities to work those qualities, those exact courage as an example, right? To work courage into those moments. What does it look like to be courageous in this moment? How is this a courageous act? And that more surrendering to fear. Contrast those. What does a courageous decision in this circumstance look like?
Okay, so for whatever reason, I've started watching like old clips of Kung Fu, the TV show, on YouTube. So I take a couple breaks during the day for like 10 or 15 minutes just to like clear my head and move on to the next task. So like I've been watching Kung Fu clips. I don't know why. But there's one I watched yesterday that came to mind as you were talking about courage versus fear, and I don't even remember the characters' names, to be quite honest, because I never watched Kung Fu. Was before my era, but I'm vaguely familiar with the show. And the main character of Kung Fu has this confrontation with this cattle baron dude, who's all bluster and like I've never been afraid of anything kind of thing. But for some reason they have this pit dug out filled with rattlesnakes.
Oh, nice.
And the rancher's afraid to go in the pit.
Of course.
Obviously. But, the main character of Kung Fu is not afraid to go into the pit with the rattlers because he actually isn't afraid of anything, whereas the cattle dude isn't, or actually is afraid of things that he's not willing to admit that he's afraid of. I'm not sure if any of this is making sense, but as you're talking with your son about courage and fear, sometimes the more courageous thing is to do nothing because so many people are demanding that you do something. Anyways, just a random aside from Kung Fu that may not necessarily make it into the podcast episode, but that's what came to mind.
Well, so there again is reinforcing this idea that if you know where you are taking your boy, you can see these individual opportunities as ways to help him get there. Right?
Right.
The bike example, the driving example, the first job example, the working around the house, whatever it is, if you know where you're going, then these different circumstances, events, stages, transitions, they become opportunities for you to call out those qualities that you already know are in the boy. He just needs to learn them and experience them and implement them, embody them, maybe is a better way to say it. And you can be the wind in his sails, the tailwind that can help move him in that direction when you take advantage of those opportunities.
So if you could go back to talk with your 2.5-year-old son when he was about to become a big brother, what would you have said to him then, knowing what you know now and all the work that you've done and defining manhood and getting your boys, to the launch pad and out on their own? What would you say now to that 2.5-year-old boy?
It's a great question. So, first of all, we would go somewhere. Milkshakes, ice cream, hamburgers, and French fries. We would go somewhere and turn it into an event that he could remember, to touch and feel and experience. And, whatever my boy would have been interested in food-wise at the time, we would have gone there. And I think we would have talked about what's coming in 2.5-year-old language. We would have talked about what's coming and acknowledged. And I think my energy would have been high and excited about what that means for our family and me as a dad. But then also specifically engage him with, here's how this is going to impact you. And here's what I see in you as becoming that big brother. Someone to watch out for him, someone to take care of him, someone to help out mom when she's got her hands full, or to help me when I've got my hands full, to help us have another pair of eyes, because this little person is going to be extremely helpless. And you don't remember when you were this age, but you couldn't do anything for yourself. And so can you help us to be able to help this person? And so you kind of see where I'm going, like call out a more of a serving attitude and mindset, and a giving and a caring and care for responsibility. Again, I know 2.5-year-old logic is not the same. And it's probably a pretty short conversation, probably short bursts of these things.
So not one conversation, but several conversations.
Well, like we come and go from these French fries are great to you're going to be a great big brother to, hey, what do you think of this milkshake to like, here's how you could really help mom and me out, because we're now divided in taking care of both of you, right? Like in little bits and pieces. And it's probably not just a one and done conversation either, but I would make it a special place for him, just him and me. And we would acknowledge that things are changing, but you're ready. I continue to believe that you can speak life into your kids, into your boys, and almost physically see them get taller and puff their chests out, because that swell of pride that they feel because my dad notices me and he believes in me. Like, don't underestimate the power of communicating that to your boys. It's huge.
That's good. So it seems as though that would be good advice to anyone who has a child who is about to graduate into older siblinghood,
or any new stage that they might not see coming, or that might be intimidating to them, going from one school to another. Like there's all kinds of stages and changes and transitions that happen. How could we as dads, is the question, how can we as dads use them as opportunities to reinforce where we're guiding them to down the road to manhood?
That's really good, Mark. I appreciate your input.
So on the other end, just getting started, what are you hearing? What are you processing? What are you taking away from this that you might want to use to help your boy through this big change that's coming?
Well, one thing that we've noticed about our son is that he wants to help already. Like, he's looking for ways to help. And so just encouraging that and noticing it, calling it out, and giving him things to do on a consistent basis to help, I think is great preparation for what's about to come for him.
Yeah. Lean into what's already there that you see. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then we've had conversations about, or conversations is probably not the right word I would use, more like we've made statements along the lines of, whether it's not really, conversations are two-way. This is very much like we're telling you how this is going to go.
Understood.
Of like, hey, you're going to be a big brother. Things are going to change. Mama can't pick you up right now, which is actually true. Like my wife is at the point now where she can't really bend over. I mean, she's pretty much like,
she's ready to go.
She actually got stuck in bed last night because the baby was lodged up against her pelvis and she couldn't rotate her hips properly.
Oh no.
And so she had to like maneuver her body around to like free up her hips so she could get out of bed. Anyway, so that's pregnancy for you, right?
Right.
So she's like, I can't do everything for you anymore. So it's not just a conversation I'm having with him. It's a series of statements I'm having with him. It's both of us together. Like we're both on the same team here about calling him into and encouraging him to take on these roles. But I feel like there's only so much we can really do until the new one arrives, because he's just not going to get it until that's a reality for him.
Well, and thinking back to the question that you asked me, that might also be that opportunity or another opportunity to just get him out, the two of you, and be like, hey man, your world just changed a bunch, but here's how it can be beneficial, and here's where I see you, and right? Like once he gets to experience, oh, mom and dad's attention is really divided. Now I know what that means experientially. Another opportunity to reinforce what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like those are the two big things that I'm taking away from this conversation. And probably the most useful that we could do right now for him and getting him ready.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's good. Well, listeners, I think maybe if I were to summarize the last 20-some minutes into two themes, it would be this. One, have a vision for where you are guiding your boys as early as possible so that you can, number two, use the natural circumstances and situations in life to more intentionally and purposefully lead them there. I don't know where you are in your stage of parenting. Maybe your kids are older. Maybe you are anticipating your first kid. I don't know, but it's never too early to start thinking about the man that you want to help your boy to become, and using opportunities like growing your family or the various other circumstances, situations that we've been talking about, using those as opportunities to help reinforce the man that you are trying to raise your son to become. So there's my summary. What do you do with it? That's the challenge before you. You hear me say this often at the end of these episodes. What are you taking away? What are you going to do? Don't let this just be information that comes in, but allow it to be transformative as you process what you're going to do with it. All right, with my chickens honking in the background, let's put a bow on this. Josh, thanks again for this example, for your wisdom, your stories. Always fun to have you on.
It's always good to be with you, Mark.
And listeners, thanks for being with us. And as always, we'll be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, adios. Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. You know, we would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.